Hello everyone, and welcome to today's bathroom demonstration. My name is Kayla, and I will be presenting for you today. And then we also have Emily here with us on chat. She's here to answer any questions you have during today's demonstration. Now before we get started, we're going to take a look at our GoToMeeting control panel. By default, you'll be on Use Mic and Speakers. That's kind of the standard. You don't need to worry about setting up a microphone today because we do have everyone muted. However, you can still ask questions via chat. If you're having a little trouble hearing me, you can select this audio setup button. It'll give you some troubleshoot options so you can go in and try to fix that problem. If you're still having difficulties hearing me, feel free to switch over to the use telephone. You'll see a number and a pin appear below so that you can call in and listen in that way. If you do have any questions, feel free to just type those into this box here, press enter, and you'll see your question and Emily's response there below. So today we're going to be working on this bathroom over here. We'll begin by drawing out the walls of the bathroom. We'll work with our openings, our doors, and our windows. Then we'll create a custom glass shower. We're going to create a custom vanity and this partition over here. We'll also work on creating a custom mirror, show how you can go about doing that. And then we'll look at our materials and finish up by looking at our electrical options and then how our lighting is going to affect our rendering. So let's go ahead and open up our plan. So we're going to begin today with a new blank plan. And we'll start, just like we always do, by drawing out our walls. So up here in our architectural toolbar, which is our drawing tools, we're going to find our walls and simply draw out a straight interior wall. Now you'll notice we do have a number of different wall types available. Since we're focusing in on one room, we'll just stick with our interior walls for now. So we're just going to click and drag to draw out a wall. And notice that as I draw walls, I get a temporary dimension that appears running alongside the wall. Now for right now, I'm not concerned about the dimensions quite yet. I just want to get the general shape down. And once I do connect all the walls of this room, you'll see I have this living area that appears below. And also, once I get this room connected, if we get into a 3D view, we'll take a look at our floor overview here. You can see we already have a molding around the edge of our room, and then we also have drywall all set up and flooring. And if we get into a different view, you would see a ceiling as well. So we have quite a few elements that are created just by drawing out the walls of the room. And we can draw out walls in this view as well. So if we were to grab a straight interior wall and simply click and drag, we can draw that out so that now we have two separate rooms here. And now I like to work in both 2D and 3D. So I'm going to grab my 3D tab here. I'm simply going to pull it over until it's in the correct location, and then I'll release it so that we can have our 2D and our 3D side by side. And I'm going to zoom in with my scroll wheel here. So now I'm going to focus on dimensioning my space. So I'm going to come up and use my automatic dimension tools. I'm going to use my auto interior dimensions since we're focusing on an interior space. And I'm going to delete this one. We don't really need that. There we go. So now I can use these to select each wall in turn and select the dimension perpendicular or parallel to it to redimension the space. Now I always want to select the wall that I physically want to move. So I'm going to click on this dimension with this wall selected, and we're going to change it to 16 feet 6 inches. Hit enter, and it will move the wall that we have selected. Then we'll select this one, and then this one. Oh, actually I wanted that to be 8 feet 3 inches. And then we just have two more to do. We'll select this wall and change this to 14 feet, and then this far wall, and we're going to change that to 7 feet. There we go. So now I'm going to delete all these dimensions because I don't need them anymore. So I'm going to come up to Edit and then Delete Objects, all rooms on this floor, all two of them, and then Automatic, and just for kicks we'll do Manual as well. So now that we've dimensioned all of our walls, let's place our doors and windows. So we can do this either in our 2D or our 3D view. So we'll start simply by placing a window along this wall, and then we're going to open it up to edit it. So we'll double click to open that, and the width I do want to remain 36 inches, but the height I want to be only 44. Floor to top we're going to do 86, so we're pretty close, but not quite. And then floor to bottom will automatically update to 42. And that's all the changes I want to make here, so we'll select OK. And then I'm simply going to use my edit toolbar to copy and drag out a copy right next to it. We'll bump it up against there. And then once I have two copies, I'm going to hold down my Control key to select both together, and I'm going to mold them together. So they're now a mold unit. And now that they are a mold unit, I'm going to dimension the two of them together. So we'll select there and select that dimension, and I want it to be exactly 8 inches from the wall. There we go. So now let's place a door. We have several different door options. We're going to place a hinged door for the opening to the space, and we're going to double click to open that up and change our door style. Go to our core catalog here, glass panel, there we go. We'll select OK, and then we'll select OK again to apply that change. I'm going to redimension this so that it's a little bit bigger. So we'll change that to 60 inches wide, and notice once it hits a certain length it is going to change to a double door. Then we're going to place a different door style. We're going to do a pocket door over here in our entry to the closet area. And one new feature of the X7 version is that we now have automatic framing for pocket doors. And we're going to just resize this as well until it reaches a double door. There we go. And then I want to apply this door style. Here, we'll rotate around so we can see what we're doing. I want this door style on this door. So what I'm going to do is use a new tool in X7 called our Object Eyedropper. So I'm going to select this door, come down to our toolbar down here, and we're going to select what properties. So we're going to clear all, and then scroll down until we find Style, select OK, and then we're going to paste it right onto that door. So instead of having to open up the door and find the correct style all over again, we can just copy and paste it over from any existing door in the program. We can also use this feature for things like cabinets. If we have a particular hardware on a door, if we have a lintel on a window, we can copy that from the window and place it onto a door. There's a lot of different functionality for that particular tool, and it's really a time-saving feature. Alright, so with that we have finished up our doors. So I'm going to exit out of this view and we're going to get into a full camera view. So we'll just come up here and grab our full camera, and we're going to click and drag to look at the area that we're going to be creating a glass shower. And again, we'll tile those vertically. If you're using an older version of our program, you can also come up to Window and tile vertically, or use Shift F6 to do so. You can also do that in X7. So now we're going to create our custom glass shower. And if we take a look at our design that we're working on here, so we're going to create this glass shower. We're going to do so using pony walls, and we'll draw that out now. So first, we'll just create a basic half wall. So we have a straight half wall option, and we'll click and drag to draw that out. We'll do so on both sides, and then we'll connect them. So now we have a separate room created here. And I'm going to hold down my Control key to select all three of these walls. We'll open them up all at once. So first off, we're going to come down to our wall types, and we're going to change to a glass shower wall. And under our Newell's Balusters tab, we can change the height of this to 96 inches. There we go. And then we're going to go back to the wall types and we're going to select pony wall, which is going to allow a lower wall type. And we'll change this lower wall type to our interior tile. And then we'll select OK. And I'm going to grab this wall and we're just going to pull it back so it's a little bit bigger. There we go. Now we're just going to drop in a door, and we're going to do a hinged door and open it up to make some changes. So we're going to change this over to hinged and leave it a slab door. That's correct. Then we're going to change the thickness to 3/4 inch, and we're going to come down to our hardware and change the interior handle. So we'll get into the library and we're going to go to our hardware. Actually, we're going to go into our bonus catalogs here. So these are catalogs that we can download from our website online, and I'll show you where a little bit later. I'm going to go into oversized pull and grab one there. And then for exterior handle, we're going to do the same thing. Here we go. Select OK, and I want that to be 42 inches up from the bottom. And then we are going to add some hinges too, so we'll get into the library there. And this is again in our bonus. We have a shower hardware, and once we find one, we'll select OK. Then we'll select OK again. Then I'm going to select this camera view where it will allow me to grab the material. So I'm just going to grab this tempered glass material and we're going to paste it onto this object here. Then I'm going to pull this up from the bottom, which is going to create an automatic sill for us. And I want to grab this door because I want to change this door over to the other side. And then I'm going to reduce this, and we can show the door open so that it's just slightly ajar for our render view. So now we need to do a little work with the molding and materials in the room. So first of all, let's select this room, and we'll go ahead and remove the molding from inside that shower, so we obviously don't need that. Select OK. Then we're going to apply some materials. So we'll go ahead and use our material painter here, and we'll go into our plan materials and grab one and then just paste it to the floor in the room. Then we're going to create a polyline solid out of this room. So when we select a room, we have the ability to create a room polyline. And what this does is it enables me to then convert it to a polyline solid. Select OK. So we're going to set this at 96 inches and 4 inches thick. And we'll select OK. And we're just going to drag this out so it slightly comes out of the room itself. There we go. Then I'm going to use my material eyedropper again just to grab this material and paste it right onto there. And now we need to work on the moldings in the main room. So we're going to do something similar. Instead of creating a CAD polyline that we can then convert to a solid, we're going to make room molding polyline based off of the default base molding that's already there. So what it's going to do is it's going to take our existing molding and turn it into a polyline so that then I can select each edge. And we have a new feature in X7 where I can simply remove the molding from each selected edge down in our Edit toolbar, so that with 3 clicks, the molding around the shower has been eliminated. Then I'm going to do A similar process, we're going to create a polyline based off of the main room, and then we're going to convert it to a molding polyline. Select OK. We're going to set the height at 96 inches and change the molding to, we'll add new and get into our core catalog here, find a crown molding, and then once we find one we like, we'll select OK. And I want it to be 3 inches high and 3 inches wide. To OK there, and then it will apply that molding for us. And this one I actually do want to extend around the shower. Now I need to change my wall materials for the shower. So I'm not going to use my material painter on walls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the wall, and we're going to break these two walls right where they meet up with the shower so that we can select these two walls as separate entities from the walls they were connected to. Then we're going to open them up, and under the materials we're going to change the wall surface to match up with what we have here on our pony wall. So once we find that, again in our plan materials, we'll swing around so we can see the interior. Then we're going to go to our wall covering tab. We're going to add a new wall covering because I want there to be a tile band around the center of this. So we'll scroll down until we find what we're looking for here. Then we'll select OK. And now we need to change its location on the wall. So first we're going to change the height of this to 16 inches. We're going to make it a little thicker. And we're going to raise it up to about 40 inches. There we go. And once that looks correct, we'll select OK. And you can see that applied here in our shower. Now I'm just going to get into our library by opening up our library browser up here in our architectural toolbar. And I'm going to find a shower pan, or a shower drain rather. So I'm just going to search for drain. And once we find the one we're looking for, we'll just go ahead and drop that right into our plan. There we go. Then I'm going to get into my catalogs here, and we'll go to our bonus catalog and down to shower hardware and shower heads and faucets. And once we find one we like, we'll go ahead and drop that into our shower. And the last thing I want to do for this shower area is we're going to create a shower niche that we can store stuff in. So we're going to do that with our pass-through tool. In fact, let's get into an elevation view. So we're going to exit out of this library browser, and we'll leave this open, but we're also going to do an elevation. So grab a wall elevation right against this wall, and I'm just going to put it over here. There we go. Now we're going to drop in a pass-through. So that's going to be one of our window options. We're going to do a pass-through here. And then we're going to resize this. We'll open up our specification. We're going to do 16 inches wide and 32 inches high. And then we're going to remove casing, and we're going to remove the sill as well. And then we'll select OK. Then we're going to come over to our wall elevation, and we're going to use our polyline solid tool to create a back for this. So we'll draw out a back and make sure that it covers the full area. And then in our floor plan view, we're going to move that back right into place. There we go. We're going to use our point-to-point move tool. So we'll do select the edge and select where we want it to move. Alright, and once that is placed, we'll exit out of our elevation view and get back into our full camera. And then let's open this a little further so that we can access that. And we're just going to use our material eyedropper tool to paste this material onto both sections. It looks like we also need to lower these down a little bit, so we'll simply pull it down until it's in a good location. Alright, with that we finish off our shower area. So we're going to focus in on a different area. I'll exit out of this camera view and we'll draw another one. So let's work on our custom vanity area over here. And we'll close this door for now so we have a little better angle to walk over into this section. There we go. So we're going to use our new X7 cabinet tools. So we'll start for our vanity just by dropping in a base cabinet. Then we're going to open it up to edit it. So first of all, we're going to change the width of this cabinet to 8 feet. And we're going to change the height down to 32 inches. We're going to have a vessel sink on top of there. And then if we come down to our front, we're going to split our vertical layout. And then we're going to select the vertical layout again, which is going to be this section, and we're going to split it once more. Then if we select our horizontal layout, we can equalize those 3 sections so that we have 3 equal segments to work with. And when we're working in our cabinet, we're going to always want to try to work from left to right. So we'll start with our first section, and we're going to change this. As you can see, it's itemizing out our separations, our drawers, and our doors, just like it always has. So first of all, I'm going to delete this door, and it's going to be an opening, which is exactly what I want. And then I'm going to increase this drawer to 12 inches, and I'm going to change it actually to a double door. So if we come down to item type with this drawer selected, we're going to change it to a double door. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the third section. So, well, we'll move on to the second one first. So now we're in the middle section, and we're going to change this to a bank of drawers. So first off, we're going to change this top drawer to a double drawer. Then we're going to grab this auto right door, and we're going to split it horizontally so that now we have 2 auto right doors, which the first one we're going to change to a double drawer, and then this bottom one we're going to change to a nice big drawer. There we go. Then we'll move on to our final section over here. So we'll grab that vertical layout, and again we're going to delete the door, which is going to change it to an opening. We're going to grab the drawer, change it to 12 inches, and change it to a double door. Then I'm going to come down to my door drawer. Actually, we'll do sides back, and I'm going to do the back side match the front so we can see all the way through. And with that, we have our nice big vanity. We'll select OK, and you can see those changes apply. And the last thing I want to do with this vanity is just change the material of this cabinet. So I'll go into my material painter, get into my plan materials because I want to grab this tile. So we'll scroll down till we find that, and we'll paste it onto the object. There we go. So now let's get into an elevation view. So I'm going to exit out of this full camera for now, and we'll take a wall elevation of this vanity area. So we'll get into our library because we're going to need that, and we'll come up and find, let's just type in vessel. And once we find a vessel sink we want, we can drop that in, and then we'll copy it and reflect it on the other side of this cabinet. Actually, before we do that, I want to center it over this drawer, but if I try to center it, it's not going to find that because it's just going to find this cabinet as a whole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a CAD line. I'm simply going to draw it out, and we can zoom in a little bit to make sure that we're being accurate here. We're going to draw it out right in the center of this cabinet. We'll even drag it up a little bit. Then we're going to grab this sink, and we can center that right over this CAD line. Then once it's centered, we'll grab this sink and we'll copy it and reflect it around to the other side. Then we'll need to find a faucet, so we'll get into our core catalogs, our architectural fixtures, and sinks, actually no faucets, and wall mounted, and once we find one we like, we can place it right over top that sink. Use our center tool to center it over top of this sink, which we already know is centered on our cabinet, and then copy and reflect it to the other side. And actually, I'm going to grab both of these by holding down my control key and just pull them down a little bit. There we go. So now we're going to work on a custom mirror. So to do this, we're going to start just by grabbing a polyline solid, and we'll simply draw out a square to begin with. And I want this square to be 1 foot 4 inches by 1 foot 4 inches. There we go. Then I'm going to grab each edge in turn, and you can tell which edge is selected because it has the larger selection handle. And I'm going to change the line to an arc. So it's going to change that line to a curve for me, and then I'm just going to drag that out using this edit handle. So this little triangle is allowing me to adjust the radius of that arc. So we'll change that to an arc, and we're going to do this on all 4 sides. And pull it out a bit, and then finally this last one, we'll pull it out. It looks like this one we might need to come in just a little bit. There we go. So once we have our custom shape, I'm going to copy and paste it in place, so it's going to create an exact copy on top of it. Then I'm going to convert that copy to a CAD line, which is just going to be a 2D line in this view. It's not going to have any 3D properties. Then we'll convert the polyline again to a 3D molding polyline. We'll select OK, and you can see it's applying a molding already. And we'll come down to the molding tab and change it. Actually, we're going to replace it with an edge molding. So once we find one we like, we'll select OK, and then select OK again, and it will apply that molding. Then I'm going to select the polyline and select the mirror itself, and I'm going to make them an architectural block, at which point they're going to function as one unit. So when I move them, they're going to move together. Then I'm going to center it right over this sink and zoom out a little bit with my scroll wheel, copy it, and reflect it across. And when it's an architectural block, another handy feature of that is that I can add it to my library so that's available to me for any future plans I might have. Alright, and with that we've finished off our vanity area. Exit out of my library browser and my elevation, and we're going to work on a custom partition over here. So we'll grab a full camera again, and this time we'll look over in this direction. Now before we create the partition, before we block our view, I'm just going to use my material eyedropper to paste onto there. There we go. Alright, so now we're going to use our full height cabinet, and let's tile our views vertically again. So we'll drop this in our plan view here. Drop in a full height cabinet, and I'm going to rotate it around so we can see what it looks like so far. So there's our full height, and we're going to make quite a few changes to this just like we did with our vanity. So first off, we're going to resize it. So we're going to change this to 54 inches wide, and at that point we'll open it up and make the rest of the changes here. So the height we want to be 94.5, and the width at 54, and then the depth we're going to make 18 inches. Then we're going to get into our front, and we're going to delete a lot of these. So we're going to delete this, delete it again, and delete this, and delete the opening. So now we have 2 components. This top component we're going to change to 50 inches, and the bottom component we'll have at 34. And then let's change actually this separation in between them to about 3 inches. I want a nice big separation there. There we go. Now we're going to take this bottom one and we're going to change it to a double door. And then the top one, we're going to split this vertically twice. So now we have 3 vertical components there. And if we highlight the horizontal layout, which is this entire top portion, we can then equalize it so that we have 3 equal components. Now this one we're just going to change over to an auto left door rather than a right door. But this middle one we're going to delete it to make room for an opening. And then I'm going to specify the shelves. So we're going to change the shelving to manual. We're going to have just 2 shelves. The thickness of the shelves I want to be a nice big thick 3 inches. And the spacing is exactly what I want. So we'll select OK. Then, just like we did before, we're going to get into the sides back, and we are going to have the back side match the front so that we can see all the way through there. And if we rotate around, you can see what that looks like. And finally, we're going to go into our accessories panel, and we're going to add feet to this. So we have a 6-inch toe kick. We're going to add feet right where that toe kick is. Getting into our library, and cabinet feet, and we're going to do this one. Then we'll select OK, and you can see those feet there. And once it looks like what we're looking for, actually one last thing, I'm going to change the materials while we're in here. So we're going to go to the beaded recessed panel, which is our door. We're going to change the panel. Go to our plan materials, and we'll go to barnwood glass. There we go. And then once that's done, we'll select OK, and you can see those changes applied there. So I'm just going to pull this up till it meets up with my drywall. There we go. So now we have that nice partition where we can place our toilet. So we'll get into our library again, and let's just place a couple more appliances, or fixtures rather. So I'm going to go into our bonus catalogs, and we have bathroom fixtures. So we'll grab a toilet and place that in our plan, and then place a couple more fixtures here. So let's go into here, and we're going to grab a clawfoot tub and place it up in this area. We'll drag it into place there. And then we're going to need a toilet, so we'll come down here, and we can click on the folder to see a preview of what's inside of it. And so once we find one we like, we'll just drop that right in. Okay, so now I'm just going to double click on this full camera and exit out of our library so we can see our full view here. And one last thing I need to change before we get into some of our rendering options is I need to change that floor material. So I'm going to grab my material painter and get into our plan materials, and we're just going to select OK, and paste that into the room. So what we're looking at right now is our standard render view. It has colors and textures, and it also has shadows and can do reflections and mirrors. And if you're not seeing that, you can turn those on by going into your preferences and down to the render options. And in general, you can turn on show shadows and reflections and mirrors. Then when we select OK, we can see the shadows appear, and then we also have a reflection here in our mirror. Now we do have many other rendering options, and we can see so up in our rendering options up here. So we can change this over to a vector view, which is going to retain the color and the pattern, but it will remove the texture. And this is a great view usually for an elevation view. We have a glass house which is going to be great for showing things like shelves inside of our cabinets and seeing into other rooms so you can get a good feel for the flow of the space. Then there's a duotone option, so if you want to retain the patterns but not have to focus on the color as much. We also have a technical illustration, and then a painting, and then a water. And finally, we have a line drawing. And all of these are adjustable, so we can go to our technique options. And for instance, if we go back to our glass house, we can increase the thickness of our lines. We can increase or decrease the transparency, and then we can even change the color that this looks like. And if we go back to our standard render view, we also have a ray trace option. Now what this does is it takes the light and the textures in the room and it creates a very photorealistic image. So this is our ray trace dialog, and if we were to select to ray trace, it would start to go through a series of what's called passes. So if we just take a look at this, this is what it's going to look like until it does that first pass. And we'll open up an image here. So the longer we allow the ray trace to sit, the more clear the image becomes, and you can see how the light plays off of the room. Our metals especially are enhanced, and each texture is going to look a little more photorealistic, as well as the light sources. And speaking of our lighting, let's take a look at some of our electrical options. So we'll exit out of here. So here's after one pass. It starts to get a little bit clearer as each pass goes on. So now getting back to our full camera, we can place lights in the room. We have a number of electrical options here. So if we were to just grab a light and drop it in, it's going to adjust our image as we drop in lights. It's going to update each time. And if we open up this light, we have a light data panel where we can adjust it as a point light, or if it's going to be running parallel, we can adjust the intensity, so increase or decrease that. We can even add an additional light source if it's going to be something like a chandelier where you have multiple light sources in a single light. And then we can select whether or not this light is on or casts shadows. Sometimes when you have multiple light sources in a room, you don't want all of them on just to enhance your image a little bit. Now, this is just our default light. We can also get into our library, and if we take a look at our core catalog, get into the architectural lighting options, you can see we have many different categories for lights. So we have wall-mounted lights, which we can place on the wall. So if we zoom around over here, and then we get into our user catalog. I already have some items populated here. So we can drop in a sconce, and again, just like others, it's going to update our lighting in the room as we drop those in. And getting back to our floor plan, all of our electrical, which we're going to move around here, is showing up as red. So that's by default so that we can have an electrical plan. And we'll drop in just a couple more of those lights here. And then we have many other electrical options. So we can place outlets, 110 and 220 volts. We also have an auto place outlets, so that with one click it'll disperse outlets throughout the room. Then we have the ability to drop in light switches. So if I drop in one over here and then one over here, we can then connect our electrical. So I can grab this switch and go to this light, can grab this switch and connect to these three lights. And if I do connect two switches, you'll see it will automatically update to a three-way switch to indicate that we have a full circuit there. And these connections are modifiable as well, so we can grab these and rotate the way that they're displaying on the plan. If you don't want them to be red or you don't want them to be dashed lines, you can always adjust that as well. And once we have everything placed in our plan, let's take a look at our material list. So we go up to our tools and down to materials list. We can do for all floors, which in this case is just one room, or if we had a full home plan but we just wanted to calculate from the bathroom, you can select from one room and indicate it in that way. We're going to calculate for all floors. I'm going to exit out of this library here. So this is our material list, and it's going to place absolutely everything we placed on our plan is going to show up on this material list. And they're divided into different categories. If there are certain categories that we don't want to show up, if we're not concerned with windows, for instance, for this plan, we can come to our display options and, for instance, remove windows so that they're not included in our material list. And all of the manufacturer catalogs that we've used, so we have Dow Tile that we've used, Benjamin Moore Paint, is going to show up here as well. It's going to tell us on what floor we've placed these items. So in this case we only have the single floor, but it would tell us if we had multiple. It'll give us a brief description of what it is, and then how much and what the unit is. So in this case it's 307 square feet. Then we have a column for pricing, and then it'll multiply that by our count so we can get a total cost. We also can add additional categories. So if we again open up our display options, down in columns, we can add a category for markup or labor, equipment, and we can remove ones that we're not going to use. So we have a lot of control over this material list and what it's going to display for us. We can also export this material list as a text file, a CSV. If we're going to be working with Excel, we can export it as an Excel spreadsheet, and then also as a web page, so you can work with other programs as well. So we're going to exit out of here and exit out of that material list. We're not going to save it at this time. Go back to our camera view. There's just a couple of things I want to show you about materials here. So if I take this material here, which actually we should probably be in a different angle for this. Let's take a camera view looking straight at this so we can take a better look at it. So here we have this tile that we're using for our countertop and for our backsplash here. And on the countertop, it's actually not rotated in the way that I would like. I want it to rotate 90 degrees so that it's going the same direction as our backsplash. But if I use my define material to adjust that, where I can get down to my texture and I can rotate that 90 degrees, it's going to rotate my backsplash as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo that, and then we're going to use our material eyedropper to grab this. We're going to get into the material painter, come down to our plan materials, and then we're going to take this material, which we can show is currently being used, we're going to copy it. Now it's going to open up a copy, and we can rotate this copy 90 degrees. Now when it renames the material, it's not going to adjust that material throughout the rest of our plan. So that now, when I use this, it will just affect this one component. So if we want to have several iterations of the same material, that can be a great way to go about it. We can also copy and paste materials directly from our library browser, but it's a great new feature of X7 that we actually have the ability to get into those plan materials here, see a full list, and make changes to those materials right from within our select material dialog. It gives us a lot of flexibility in our designs. And when we are copying and pasting materials, we have the ability to adjust our scope. So we can paste just a component, so that would be just the countertop, which we just did. We can paste it on through the whole object throughout the entire room, and then throughout the entire plan as well. But with the color, we also have this option to blend colors with materials. And what this does is it will actually blend that color with the existing texture. So we can easily apply colors within the space or within our library browser to a material that we want to maintain the texture of. Then if we get into our material definition again and come down to that texture tab, you can see where we've blended that. And if we wanted to take a different color, so if we select that color, it's going to allow us to grab an eyedropper And we can pull any material out of our plan. You can see as I'm moving my cursor around the screen, it's going to adjust that color. So we can pick up the hue of this tile, for instance, or we can even pull in color from an outside source. We could pull that in, and this will go off of the screen and pick up colors outside of the program as well. And then if we want to go back to the original color, we can cancel out of that, deselect blend color with texture, and we'll go back to our original texture. Now we can also adjust the properties of a particular material. So I'm going to go back to my original full camera for this, and I'm going to use this define material on this glass over here, which if we come down to our properties tab, you can see our transparency is set at 20%. So we can see through that quite a bit, but we can increase that if we want to see into it a little bit more. We also have different classes of materials. So this is a reflective material. We could also change it to more of a mirror. We could do a polished. We can do predefined metals, which are great for faucets and for our different fixtures. And then when we select OK, you can see it's going to update that so it's a little bit more transparent for us. I do want to show you an example of define material on a metal. So we'll go ahead and select this faucet, which is an aluminum breast. Then we'll come down to the properties, and we have the ability to do a ray trace view. So we're going to switch over to a ray trace view so we can see what that's going to look like. So there's our aluminum brushed on this teapot sample here. And then what happens if we switch over to a copper? It's going to change over that material for us. So we can go through each one of these, and it's going to give it a vastly different feel depending upon what we're selecting. And then we do have additional categories to be able to adjust the materials from there. So this is what it's going to look like in our ray trace view. So adjusting those materials not only helps in your standard render view here, but it also will make very large changes for your ray trace view down the line. So that pretty much finishes up our bathroom. Now I just want to show you a few things on our website. So under our products, we have two different programs in our Chief Architect line. We have our Premiere and our Interiors version. I was working in Chief Architect Premiere today, but everything that we did, or the vast majority of what we did, would be available in the Interiors. You would definitely be able to replicate our design today. If you want to see a full product comparison, we can go and have a breakdown of every single feature available in the program so you can know what's going to be available in Premiere versus Interiors. We also have a free trial download, so you can go onto our website and download a trial version of both the Premiere and the Interiors. And that is an unconditional trial. You just won't be able to save or print while you're working in that. Under our User Center, we have catalog downloads, so that's going to have bonus and manufacturer catalogs, many of which are content available for our SSA subscribers, but many of which are also available without. We have training videos here as well. These can be a great resource to get in and learn more about the program. And they're also divided into different video series. So for instance, if we want to learn more about kitchen and bath design, it's going to give us a number of videos that will be applicable to that. And again, under our User Center, we have webinars, seminars, and events, so you can sign up for additional training options. We also have our samples gallery. So this is going to give you some sample renderings, and if we take a look at some of these, especially in the kitchen and bath section, we can open them up and see some great examples of ray traces and other types of renderings that will give you some great inspiration and show you what is possible with the program. And then we also have our Chief Talk Professional Forum. It's a great way to get in and communicate with other users. We have a very active user forum that you're welcome to go and pose questions before or after you purchase the program about how to use it or about specific things in your area. It's a resource that I definitely recommend you take advantage of. Under our support tab here, we have our knowledge base. So here we have over 700 articles that are going to walk you step by step through various things throughout the program. They're also divided into different categories. So if we wanted to learn more about electrical, we can do so, or defining different materials, there's 19 articles here. Or maybe our ray trace option, that's going to give us 4 different articles that might give us some really good insight on how to do a great ray trace. So once again, we do have those 2 programs. We have Chief Architect Premier and Chief Architect Interiors. Our Interiors version is $1,995 and the Premier is $2,695. Everything that's in the Interiors version is contained in the Premier version, so the Interiors is just a subset of the Premier, focusing on interior spaces, specifically kitchens and baths especially. All purchases of our software do also include a year of support and software assurance, so that's going to give you access to the training videos online, to download any and all catalogs that we have available for the programs, and then it'll also give you free upgrades to new releases and discounts on additional training options. So thank you so much for attending today. If you have any additional questions, feel free to type those in. We'll be happy to answer those, and we'll be here for a few minutes after the demonstration ends. And if you have any additional questions, you can definitely send us an email, give us a call. We'd be happy to help you out. And have a wonderful day.